Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Peyton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Okay, here we are on Saturday. We're going to recap quite a game as Mizzou's going bowling at 6-1, defeating Kentucky. We're going to dive into it. We just finished the game. Kenny and Peyton are here. So we're going to do the recap. But first and foremost, got to get a quick word from the sponsor, Bet Online. Football is back, and Bet Online is your number one information source for all your sports wagering info, with all the up-to-minute stats, news, scores, and matchup breakdowns. Get the latest game odds, spreads, and totals from the NFL and college football at your fingertips with Bet Online's real-time updates on statistics, news, and odds. From week 1 all the way to the college football playoff and Super Bowl, Bet Online gives you access to the best football promotions and contests anywhere available online. I know we just tweeted our best beats of the week. Those all hit because we did college football. I think the Louisville one didn't, but I know mine did. Shout out Wyoming for that. But got all those ads from Bet Online. So head to the website today. Use your mobile device to get in on the action. Remember, use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV, BELIEVE, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts. Okay, bringing the other boys in here. Final from Kroger Field in Lexington, Mizzou 38, Kentucky 21. We're here on Saturday to recap and dive into it. This was a wild, wild affair on the road. Turned the broadcast on to watch, and instantly my first thought was, oh no, this is not Vandy. This is not the construction site, half-empty stadium. The Kentucky fans were ready to rock and get their side a bounce-back win after they got blown out by Georgia. And for about 13 minutes of the first quarter, fellas, they were doing just that. Up 14-0. We're all over Mizzou. Tigers looked dead in the water until QB1. Let me just make sure I have this right. Yes, that's right. QB1 Luke Bauer, of course, striking with a fake punt and a touchdown to a man I am now dubbing Marquis Big Play Johnson, who just seems to only catch bombs for touchdowns nowadays. 39-yard strike, and then it was all Mizzou from there, pretty much. Outscored Kentucky 35-7 in the final remaining rest of the game. Kentucky had a bunch of yards on penalties. Mizzou's defense had a huge get-right game. We're going to dive into all of it. But, guys, Mizzou at 6-1, the overarching story here. The Tigers are going bowling, and it is October 14th when, they get their 6th win. I mean, what a start to the year. What a game. What a win on the road. We didn't have, I guess, other than a fake punt, which is just crazy in of itself, didn't have any sort of weird, controversial Kentucky-Mizzou moments, at least that I could think of off the top of my head. No 2018 PI call, no crazy punt outside of the punter's box. Just a fake punt that turns into an epic Mizzou 38-21 win over the Wildcats. First impressions before we dive into all the specifics.
Quick correction. It was not they outscored them 35-7 down the stretch. They outscored them 38-7 down the
My bad, 38-7. Late Mevis field goal.
It's a little bit of a strange game because, good God, Missouri could not have had a more disastrous start to the game than they did. I mean, Drinkwitz, even in the post-game interview, he said him and Colt Kubalik, I believe is who the post-game reporter was, he told him, before the game, we need to get off to a fast start, take the crowd out of it. If we don't, I'm going to be a little concerned. They did not do that. They made what I would personally say is a mistake decision to receive the opening kickoff, run, pass, really bad set of play calls. They punted away. Kentucky Ray Davis absolutely marches down the field on his own. They score. Just a terrible, terrible start all around. Brady Cook throws a bad pick. But man, after those first 15 minutes. I mean, even early on in the second, it did look a little bit like, oh, this is going to be one of those games for Mizzou. It really felt like the classic Mizzou-Kentucky game where it's just a psychological block because on like a third and I think it was 6, very manageable on Kentucky's side of the field. Connor Tollison again, snap issue, way high. Cook has no choice but to just dive on it, and the drive seemingly ends. But then the difference came. I mean, last year the play that ultimately ruined Missouri was that punt that Goodfellow had like 50 yards over his head, and then he got rewarded for it. Today the play that defined the game was Luke Bauer throwing an absolute strike. By the way, this was one of maybe the best ball all night from either side. To Marquis Johnson, like Knowlton said, he's just got a knack for huge plays. That really changed the whole dynamic of the game. I mean, Kentucky really was never the same after that. Devin Leary, man, I don't know what on earth has happened to him. This is a mess of a quarterback. And I do think the commentary team actually brought up a good point. I almost think the offense is just way too complicated for him to really operate. They brought up that when he had that 3,500-yard season at NC State, 35 touchdowns, all that, it was a simple offense. Liam Cohen comes back to Kentucky. He reinstitutes the pro style that works so well with Will Levis, and it just has not worked at all. And credit to Mizzou's defense, though, because after a terrible first quarter, they absolutely manhandled Kentucky the rest of the way out, outside of one drive. The defensive pressure was great in the second half. They forced 3 turnovers in the second half. When you do that, you're going to win football games very easily. This was not a close game after the first quarter.
Yeah, my first initial reaction, before we get really into the deep part of everything, is that you look at the beginning of this game. It's the way Mizzou responded, the way they got back into it. Ray Davis, 5-yard rush, 3-yard rush, 13-yard rush, 14-yard rush, 70 rushing yards in the first quarter. Ray Davis was, showing why he was one of the best running backs in college football. He was all over it. He finished with 128. Another thing that just sticks out, if I told you, and this is coming straight from the broadcast, I thought this was a great point they made. If someone had said that Luther Burden only had 2 receptions for 15 yards at the end of the game, where do you think Mizzou stands? And you think they're losing by a lot. You think they're getting shut out. There was, you're seeing production from everywhere on this offense. Maybe not the best day overall for the offense, but you still saw a lot there, and the defense stood up and got them in good positions and kept this game within reach and really just shut out Kentucky. Overall, just everyone really just fired on all cylinders after that rough first quarter.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty to dive into, and I think that is where I want to start, is on the offensive side of the ball, because I do think the defense was the standout unit, maybe the special teams of the fake punt, but I think the defense overall was very much a standout unit. But yeah, I mean, 2 receptions for 15 yards. He was targeted 5 times, Luther Burden, and this team didn't skip a beat. And I think for Mizzou fans, for most of them, I don't think they'll be all, at least I wasn't, all that surprised that this team is still able to click, even when Burden is not even necessarily bottled up, but just, sort of limited, whether, that's the other team doing something well or just them opting to target some of these other guys. I mean, Theo Wease, 6 catches, 58 yards and a touchdown. We know the Marquis Johnson touchdown. This receiving core just had steady production all evening long, and Brady Cook, after a very early pick when he was targeting Burden, I believe, and just did kind of the stare down thing again, like we saw against LSU, and threw it, he stayed composed, guys. And so I want your thoughts on kind of just the balance that this offense seemed to find after such a rocky start.
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, it was a bad showing for the most part. They were great in the 2-minute drill. I thought every play call was perfect. Brady Cook really looked locked in there. Theo Wease had that great end zone catch. He might have been the best offensive player tonight. I know he didn't light up the stat sheet, but very solid day for him. And the offense was better in the second half, I think significantly better. They were able to get in the end zone, I believe it was 3 times. 3 times. And for the most part, we're able to cash in. There were some goofy moments. Like, I didn't love some of the play calls in that third quarter. Like, down after they get that fumble, a 3rd and 8 swing pass to Cody Schrader. That's not the play call I want there. But I maybe that wasn't the design. Maybe it was just Cook had to get the ball out quick. I don't know. Didn't like some of the third down play calls in general. But end of the day, I mean, they were still able to put up 31 points. I mean, obviously 7 of those came from the special teams, but they put up 31 points, and the best receiver in the nation had 2 catches for 15 yards. Now, obviously, you got to get Burden going again going forward, but I'm not really worried about that. I think Kentucky took away Luther Burden tonight, and Brady Cook made them pay with spreading the ball out all around.
I have 3 pillars where I kind of want to build off of that. And the first one goes with Brady Cook. We talked about this on our own preview, on our preview with the guys over at Believe in Kentucky, that he's getting a little bit more mobility with that knee injury. He's looking a little bit better. It looked like we saw the Brady Cook, from earlier in the season, even last year. He broke out some good scrambles. 25 yards was his longest rush, 40 on the ground. Good run game today from Brady Cook, and probably just get better as the season goes on. And we've said it before that Drinkwitz's offense, and now Kirby Moore's offense, calls for some first downs with the legs and from the quarterback, and Brady Cook looked good there. Mookie Cooper now up to 302 receiving yards on the season, which is a single season high for him. Great to see for Mookie. Every time Mookie gets the ball, it's just business. And, he's not going to light up the stat sheet with, 100-yard, games, 80-yard games. He makes, when he gets the ball, he makes plays. He had 18 yards after a catch today, 2 receptions for 29 yards. And I think, Mookie's really stepped in that spot. He was a guy I was kind of worried about maybe that would try the transfer portal again after last year. With Barrett Bannister gone, he had an opportunity to step up, and I think he's doing it, even though that he's not making, a slew of plays. When he gets the ball, he does well. My last one is Brett Norfleet, the freshman tight end, stepping in as a starter now after Tyler Stevens' pretty rough game against LSU. Tyler Stevens, who I saw once on the field as a blocker in the fourth quarter on a run play, not even out there anymore. This is Brett Norfleet's job. 4 receptions, 40 yards. Some of these, these are some things that probably didn't get a lot of attention, and I think those 3 things are pretty big for the offense today.
Yeah, Brett Norfleet almost had a TD. That's big. That's big for us. We're obviously big Brett Norfleet fans, and good to see him, slot in as the starter now. The thing I'll add to that, Kenny, just on the balance of this offense, I do have to give some credit to Cody Schrader, because Kentucky, for the most part, was bottling him up. And yes, I agree with Peyton that there were times that they went to him that they should not have, especially to start that game, with the very much conservative play calling that we haven't seen for the most part this season. But then he busted that one run out. I think it was his longest run of the day, the 19 yards, and he got into the end zone. So, once again, he comes up big. He's a little bit Mr. Reliable. He's becoming Mr. Reliable in that aspect where, he doesn't give up. He works and figures out a way to at least get an impactful run, even if it wasn't also the biggest stat sheet stuffing day for Schrader on the ground.
I also like from Cody Schrader is that he'll get pushed around, yelled at by some defenders because he's not the fastest guy. They'll get him, and he just ignores him. He just pushes a guy and just walks away. I think that's a good mentality from him. He's been around college football for a long time now, and he's treated the SEC like it's another day on the field.
I thought that in particular, this was a very chippy game. I think was very clear. Kentucky had a lot of moments where they were kind of talking some smack. I do remember one in particular against Cody Schrader, and Cody Schrader didn't pay the time of day. I thought that when you look back last year to this year, even last week, that was probably one of the more unsung yet really impactful improvements for Mizzou. They had no really stupid penalties today. Kentucky killed themselves with penalties today. I mean, holding after holding. They had 2 unsportsmanlike conducts or something like that. 1 unsportsmanlike conduct, a personal foul. Kentucky was so undisciplined, and that's something I'm kind of used to Mizzou doing. I remember the Kentucky game last year. I mean, I think it was Josh Landry. I can't remember. There was a sideline scrum, and some Mizzou defender just took the dumbest penalty ever.
It was him. Yeah, it was Josh
Yeah.
Landry.
Just that stuff can't happen, and it didn't happen today. Mizzou did a very good job. They stayed disciplined. I think Brady Cook had a quote. I would have to go find it again about the chippy nature of the game, and he said he thought they did a good job of keeping their emotions in check. It was very nice to see Mizzou thoroughly win the penalty game.
3 things from that is that this might not be the quote you're thinking of, but this one comes from Cal McAndrew that Brady Cook said this was the type of game we knew it was going to be. We knew it was going to be a street fight. And you can't tell me that this game is not just a rivalry for some of these players, even the guys on Kentucky. We talked with, guys from Kentucky. They might not see it as a rivalry, but these players see it. I mean, this is a game of, like, these two teams were more even matched than the SEC, and they can shift the East. And it really looked like that. And I wanted to knock on those penalties real quick for Peyton as well. And you mentioned them, but I'm going to run through them real quick. Holding, false start, illegal motion, holding, personal foul. And the offensive line continue to look rough for Kentucky. And then on the defensive side, that there was that unsportsmanlike, there's a PI, roughing the passer, another PI, and an offsides. It's just sloppy play from all of Kentucky.
They had the one guy on the 2-point conversion try do the roughing the passer and then pushed Brady Cook down after that and set up that free Cody Schrader run in the like to Peyton's credit, I would expect Mizzou to have something like that happen to them, and it was just, I was watching it and I'm like, man, I know what side I'm on in this game, but that was just foolish. Like, what are you doing, man?
And good on Mizzou. I mean, there were a couple scrums on the sidelines in this game, and Mizzou did a great job of not getting. They just stayed composed. They kept it within. I thought it was very, very well done. I don't think this was not the offense's best game. It probably was the defense's best game of the year. The special teams made their biggest play of the year. But just from a discipline standpoint, just a composure standpoint, I guess I may sound like a coach, the intangibles, just being able to bounce back after such a horrible start, it really kind of was. I walked out of that game thinking that's probably the most impressed I've been with Mizzou all year. I mean, there was a thorough beatdown after the first quarter.
Yeah, 14 penalties for 122 yards for Kentucky. They had more yards from penalties than they did passing yards in this game. So, just absolutely crippled themselves by penalties. We talked about some of the key ones. I want to get into the unit that I think, like Peyton teased, had its best game this game and on the road. This Mizzou defense, I mean, my goodness! It did not start well. We had a classic Tyron Hopper missed tackle right off the jump. On that first touchdown drive, I remember, and just some miscues letting Kentucky get in the end zone early. I guess you guys just get into it wherever you guys want to take this. This was to Peyton's credit, again, just being broad, like as good of a defensive performance as we've seen this season. I think that's undisputed. Just take it away. What stood out to you guys about this defensive performance today?
Early on, I mean, it was really just a feeling of here we go again. I mean, Tyron Hopper misses an easy tackle. The D tackles just get kind of moved around and just keep missing chances to bottle up Ray Davis in the backfield. Devin Leary has a goddamn rushing touchdown. I mean, it really felt like, good God, did LSU break them?
I was going to say to butt in briefly, there was a good tweet from Gabe DeArmond who said suddenly Devin Leary has apparently turned into Jaden Daniels, and we thought all hope was lost.
Yeah, and I mean, last week, I remember thinking, it feels like every time when the defense, no matter how they've been performing under Blake Baker, when they've been able to pull out games, they normally get that one stop. No matter how they're playing, they could be playing terrible, but they'll pull out one stop. Like K-State in the fourth quarter. I mean, that midfield stop, just where you don't expect it. And they didn't get that last week. But today, I mean, Mizzou is down 21-0 entering, or 21-20, sorry, going into the fourth quarter. They take the lead. The defense, they step on the throat. Marcus Clarke gets a pick 2 drives later. They get a sack on Devin Leary. Jaden Jernigan pushes the O-lineman into Leary. He fumbles it. They have to fall on it and punt. And they played really complimentary football in the fourth quarter. Just all 3 phases were firing. It was, I mean, the defense closed. Like there's no other way around it. The offense obviously did too. They took advantage of that short field off the bad punt from Kentucky. But the defense, I mean, Cad got wound up after he got robbed of his 4th pick. He got one late just on a. I know Devin Leary was trying to make a play, but what a horrible ball. Marcus Clarke picks off a ball after he gets beat earlier in the game. Everybody showed a lot of resilience on both sides of the ball. The defense in particular, after what I think they would say was a pretty embarrassing performance last week, great bounce back for them, especially without Ennis Rakestraw.
There was a moment there in the second half where the momentum felt like it was shifting in Kentucky's favor. There were 6 straight drives where Kentucky didn't score. It would have been 7 if Cad comes up with that interception. And that was a good tweet. I got that information from Cal McAndrew, who put that out on X. And it looked like, if they make that interception, Mizzou keeps momentum. Kentucky goes down, and it scores. And that was the last time they scored in the game. That was the last time the Wildcats put points up. Other than that, just this defensive line, the defensive tackle positions have looked so much stronger. I mean, Josh Landry, who was kind of stuck behind Christian Williams, Jaden Jernigan, Darius Robinson last year, even Realist George really wasn't getting involved and then missed some time with an injury as well. He's out there. He's not the fastest guy, off the line, but he's putting pressure. And it's not just about getting to the quarterback, stopping the run game. You're putting pressure to help out your cornerbacks. You're helping out the defensive ends. If you get pressure on Leary, he's going to make a bad throw. And I mean, everybody was getting involved. Christian Williams is an animal. I mean, he's pretty nimble and pretty fast for being a defensive tackle as well. It looks like that position has really grown in the last 2 weeks. And I'm pretty excited about that because that's one of the more loaded positions on this team. Another thing that really stood out to me is Philip Roche's sack there on the blitz in the second quarter, who had 1 tackle entering today. So he's played in 4 games, so he's going to lose the red shirt. It's starting to look like to me that this 2023 class is getting involved pretty early, and I really like it. You look back at that 2021 class, a lot of those guys took a year or 2 to get into it, and there were a lot of busts. I mean, there were guys who ended up leaving for other options and got into the transfer portal because they weren't seeing time. They weren't really getting involved. Drinkwitz is getting a lot of these 2023 guys. It might just be credit to those guys. They're just showing out in practice and they're seeing time on the offense and the defensive side of the ball, and they're contributing. And that's an awesome thing to see, especially from a class that might not be that highly ranked. A lot of 3-stars in there that have contributed really well so far.
There were, in that second half in particular, I noticed a few guys that I really have not seen a lot of this year. You mentioned, is it Roche? I thought it was Roche, but Philip Roche. I mean, Philip Roche, he had that huge sack. I legitimately was like, who the hell just made that sack? And then I
me too.
jumped up.
Oh, me too.
Sidney Williams, I noticed he was around the ball a couple times defensively. I thought he played well in the second half. Josh Manning, he found the field a couple snaps on offense. So there were some new wrinkles added in. Manning didn't even get a target, but he was out there, which is encouraging to see. But no, yeah, I did definitely notice there were a lot of new faces out there, and a lot of them made good plays. Sidney Williams obviously isn't like a brand new player to college football, but I mean, he hadn't really played a lot this year. And to your point about the D-line, the tackles and the ends, I mean, it was a little bit of a rough first half. They did get going a bit in the second quarter. They took over that game in the second half. I mean, they drew a ton. I mean, the center, Eli Cox, I believe his name was for Kentucky, flat out could not handle whoever was in front of him, particularly Christian Williams, like you mentioned. I mean, he had to hold on for dear life a couple times. Jaden Jernigan made a couple plays. Like you said, Josh Landry made a couple plays. Off the edge, Robinson had that great sack on Leary that I'm pretty sure Leary had the time to throw the ball away, but he's not very good. And Darius Robinson absolutely made him pay for it. They took over that game in the second half. They played a lot better. I thought it was definitely that unit's best showing in the season.
There's a thing called the Rhino package too that Drinkwitz brought up one time last year to get a big fourth down or third down stop at the line. I'm excited to see if that gets broken out in a tight game this year. These defensive tackles they're just showing that they're improving as the season goes on. Realus George, who really hasn't seen much of the field he's seeing the field, but maybe not really showing off in our eyes. You put 3 defensive tackles out there. I think this is a really fun defensive line.
Yeah, it feels like I'm glad you brought that up, Kenny, because I know you were texting when we were talking during this game, like, oh, the D line's back. Shout out Marcus Clarke too. I know, we were a little bit worried about his performance early on. Your guy, he got an INT. He made up
Number
for that.
2 on the season.
Yeah, that was good to see. And then Cad got his 4th as well. Yeah. Yeah, that was a big pick. Cad got his 4th, obviously, after that. That was where I got nervous because, yeah, he dropped that pick and then, they marched right down the field. And so I think, Peyton, your point of resilience is also a very good thing. The only thing I'll really, add with the defensive line is like it's so nice to see, you mentioned like Roche and some of these new guys and some guys who seemingly were underperformers stepping up in this game. That's all great. And I think this D-line in particular is peaking at a really good time. I mean, it's really nice to have, them starting to play your best football 7 games in. And, now you go from there and hopefully they can maintain that. But for me, like seeing Darius Robinson, 4 solo tackles, 2 sacks. I mean, 2.5 tackles for loss, your best player, you're one of your leaders on that defensive line, like stepping up in a big game, in a key situation when your offense, has dropped off maybe a little bit. The stars aren't going as much on that side of the ball. To see him kind of step up in that moment, I was just really impressed with and happy to see, as this season goes on, him just being a leader is going to be huge.
I've always been a big fan of his. I've believed and still kind of do that if you have him lower than 2nd or maybe 3rd, in terms of just important players on that defense, or maybe just straight up best players on that defense, I think it is a mistake. When he is fully healthy, he's been dealing with the calf injury this year, was able to take the Vanderbilt game off and has really come alive the last 2 weeks. He is just a monster. He is going to be someone that Mizzou is going to have to work very hard to replace.
My last thing before we move over here is that we did mention some of those tackling issues. Joseph Charleston still looking for more consistency at that. He did force a fumble, and I'll give him credit there. The one fumble that Mizzou did recover and Drew Norwood got on that ball, it was from Joseph Charleston, punched it out. So credit to him. He knows more than what we know that what's going wrong for him. So it's still good to see kind of like those pluses when you're still having some trouble with tackling.
Yeah, definitely. It's and we can get into like as we can get into the skepticism side of this game. And obviously, especially early on, there's some things that jump out that, yeah, if that gets maintained for a whole game, it's big trouble. But the important note to have here is that they overcame it. They were resilient, like Peyton said, and they stayed locked in. They focused on the task at hand, took it one play at a time, again, to use the generic coach speak. But yeah, they did a fantastic job. We got to talk about it. I mean, the Link show, the Link train, hats off to Erik Link was Drinkwitz's words to the sideline reporter after the game. Special teams, you guys, you're talking about a unit that's had its best game. I mean, we can start with the fake punt, but there's some other stuff to get in here too. But special teams was as phenomenal as you can have it be when you literally you have a play from that unit turning the tide of this game. I don't think there's any denying like what flipped it was that fake punt. I mean, I was looking down at my phone, rage texting a lot of you guys like, what the hell is going on? This is terrible. Like a classic fumbling in the bag.
Terrible.
Yeah, Connor Tollison's terrible. Everything's falling apart on the road again. It's classic road drink, all this stuff. And then I look up and the ball is, I hear, it's a fake. And I look up and the ball is floating over to Marcus Johnson for a touchdown. I mean, it's pretty impressive for a unit that we have given, rightfully so, I believe, heavy criticism all season long.
I was doing the same thing as you. I was like just typing angry on my phone, and I look up and see Luke Bauer uncorking one. Initially, I was pissed because I was like, "Oh my God, Marquis Johnson is blanketed." But Marquis Johnson, I mean, the defender had his back to the ball and didn't look up until the last second. Marquis Johnson, I think it was Kenny last week who said he does not play. He does not play like a freshman. I mean, this guy. He's not a one-trick pony. I mean, he did not beat that guy just with his speed. He had to go up and make a nice adjustment, high point that football. Marquis Johnson is a dude. I mean, this guy is a stud. I mean, Mizzou, I think we talked about this a couple episodes. I remember texting Kenny a bit about it. Drinkwitz has really, it has just been continued investment in the receiver core. And it winds up all paying off. I know we've beaten we're practically the Mookie Cooper defender brigade at this point because I mean we were just so confused why he really wasn't taking off when he got here. And I mean he's really developed into a very, very, I think, overlooked member of this team. Luther Burden goes without saying. Theo Wease has emerged as the perfect 50-50 counterpart. And now you got Marquis Johnson, Mekhi Wingo in your back pocket too. Daniel Blood, and Josh Manning. What'd I say?
Mekhi Wingo. he was in your back pocket.
He's still in your head. Yeah, he was in your back pocket. Yeah.
Mekhi Miller. Just so many good receivers. But yeah, I mean, that special teams play, that flipped the game on its head. The game was never the same after that. Kentucky was not the same team after that happened. And they needed that because, in my estimation, last year, special teams is what lost them the Kentucky game last year. Because it wasn't just Goodfellow getting roughed by Will Norris, even though Will Norris would have done what every other player on the planet would have done. People forget Stonehouse, the punter from last year. He fumbled a snap, and instead of picking it up and punting it, he tried to run for a first down, gave Kentucky a short field, touchdown Kentucky. For whatever reason, Kenny explained it to me a while ago, and I thought it was still a really stupid reason. Last year, they kept kicking the ball short to Kentucky and setting them up with short fields, and Kentucky made them pay every time. Every time. It lost them the game, but Link got some revenge today. He absolutely deserves some props because Drink said in the postgame, like, if they go safe man, like on the punt return, they're going to run that fake play. So Link saw it, and they made the play, and it changed the game.
The reason behind that was whoever was the punt returner, I believe it was Tavion Robinson in 2022, was one of the best punt returners in the SEC, and Mizzou was really bad at defending punts or punt returns. So they just kicked it short so that everyone could get down there and stop him if he didn't call a fair catch. And it was. I remember that was a big.
Head is in his hands on the.
That was a big emphasis going into the week. It was a tough thing for them to battle. Another great quote here, relayed by our friend Callum McAndrew, from Luke Bauer, who got to be in the press conference. That's awesome to see too.
That is, yeah.
Luke Bauer said, "I played baseball. I know I can throw it." That's awesome. He went to DeSmet in St. Louis. So shout out any of those DeSmet alumni that might be listening to us in the coming days. But that's great to see for Luke Bauer. One thing about Marquis Johnson, he's listed at 5'11" and 180 pounds, which, that's a big guy. He seems so much bigger on the field. And I don't know if that's because he just plays big. Yeah, he's just alive on everything. And the one thing I've noticed too, he had 2 good kick returns, and I think that's where his job should be. Maybe even think about putting him on punt returns. Luther got banged up there, and I think it's time to maybe move him off the punt returns. And you're not really even
seeing Luther take licks on punt returns.
Yeah,
I'm out on that.
He took a shot in the place that you don't want to take a shot in, too. Let's just say.
And it's like
the commentator said that.
Yeah, and he's taken some real hits on that. Like, I love Luther Burden. He's the best playmaker in college football. Take him off punt return. I'm done. I can't bear to see him get injured on that again.
And we haven't even seen much success from the punt returns this season as we did last year with some of those returns that Luther had. We just kind of just reel something out. But right now, I don't know if Marquis Johnson can be a punt returner. I know it's a totally different job. We've seen the last couple of years that the kick returns and punt returns are two different sets of returners. Maybe that's something they can look at moving forward. But for right now, I just don't know if that's a job for Luther with kind of some of those banged up plays he's had.
I mean, special teams is the whole, like, you risk, isn't that the biggest injury risks are on those plays? So yeah, it's just
kick returns in particular.
Okay, it was mostly just kick returns, but I mean, still, I don't know. You don't want to. It's hard to risk your best players. Yes, if he houses one, I know he's done that before, but yeah, it's a little risky. Yeah. So not, that was what it was, but yeah, I mean, Marquis Johnson's been great, and we'll see where his future maybe lies. One downside, I know Mevis missed another kick, and that was another knuckleball, and I think the commentator said blocked. They did not. It was blocked that time. Okay, because I know the LSU one we thought was blocked but wasn't blocked, and this one looked like it was too, or it was, and it actually was.
Here's my thing: like, I don't want to blame Harrison Mevis for block kicks because 99% of the time a block kick is not the kicker's fault, but at a certain point, like, is he kicking it too low or something? Because it's been way too inconsistent. Like, it has to be cleaned up. I really don't. That unit has just had a load of issues. I mean, they've switched holders, they've switched long snappers. I mean, it's just the timing has been off before on some of these kicks. Messy unit, and that needs to be better. It won them a game because Harrison Mevis does have the potential to, as we've seen before, rifle off a deep 50s, even low 60s field goal. But you got to see, like, you got to be making 80% of these things, man.
Yeah, it's nervy when you're switching holders during the year. Like, you have all fall camp to develop that chemistry and figure that out. And then, you're audibling because it doesn't work, but
not even just during the year, in the first 3 or 4 weeks is just not a good sign either. And I mean, there was a punter battle as well, switching there. And I don't know.
Yeah, if that doesn't happen.
Thank God Bauer.
That punter battle doesn't happen. Yeah. If Bauer doesn't win that out.
Yeah, I don't know if Riley Williams played baseball down under. Might have been a rugby guy.
Yeah. Australian rules football.
Oh, I forgot to shout this guy out in the D line because Drinkwitz also shouted him out because he had a great response. Johnny Walker, really good response game for him. He had a sack, I remember. I think it was a carry for Ray Davis. It was blocked well on the perimeter. It looked like it was going to have some yardage behind it. Walker was able to track him down from behind, drop him for a 1-yard loss. Drinkwitz, the quote was he was really upset with himself after getting ejected from the LSU game last week. He had a great response tonight.
Yeah, that's a good point because he got burned on that touchdown, that first touchdown too, because he was matched up with Davis when he went on a passing route, and that just might have been an unfortunate personnel situation. But yeah, good for him to respond to that. Yeah, I mean, this is just it turned into a phenomenal performance. I think a lot of Mizzou fans, it's just a weird feeling. I mean, shoot, there were more Mizzou fans in there. That stadium I mentioned at the very beginning was rocking at the start of that game. And it made me really worried, and it was justified for a quarter. And then you saw, like, Kenny, you put it best when texting us, like, a tweet. I think it was from Callum or maybe Gerard Hamilton of Power Mizzou. Like, it looked like a COVID game with 3 minutes left in that stadium. And you said, it was raining and you're losing, whatever, people are going to clear out. But I mean, the Mizzou faithful stayed put, and it is very, very refreshing. The commentators kept bringing up that South Carolina game, which, I think I at least off the top of my head was probably Mizzou's best win last year. It was just a very, very impressive win on the road. It felt like that game again. And to have that in a much bigger season, it sets up some pretty exciting stuff now going forward. I don't want to go to the length the commentators were going to of, hey, if they beat Georgia, anything, what's going to happen. But I mean, this is just an awesome thing to see, on the road. Yeah, they were saying some pretty wild stuff.
If they beat Georgia, we're talking New Year's 6 playoff range, okay?
Yeah.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
It's fun that the if is there, though. It's fun that it's there. They put themselves in that spot. But
never plan your homecoming game against the inventors of homecoming, especially when you're ranked
Oh.
in October, which happened last year against South Carolina. Great atmosphere. I think they said it well that there wasn't really many open seats at Kroger Field, and looked good. I mean, the Kentucky fans look like they really love this team, but the blue and white chant, I think, is kind of silly.
Is
I
that
don't
what
know.
it was? I couldn't
They were going
tell.
blue, white. I think the MIZ
That's
and ZOU.
what it was. That is
Wow, that's
lame.
lame. That's
as
very lame.
hell.
Yeah, that's lame. Wow.
So
Even
I
if it
think
was
the
like
Mizzou
Wild
one's better.
Cats or something, I'd like that better. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad. I was gonna bring that up too because I was pretty sure South Carolina last year was their homecoming. Yeah, Drinkwitz is starting to shake that road drink narrative. And it was definitely you can't tell me it wasn't a thing before last year because his only ones were over 2-8 South Carolina in 2020 and Vanderbilt twice, I believe. Or no, just once. So yeah, I mean, the thing about this game, going back to what Kenny said earlier, it does feel a bit like a rivalry between these teams. I think it really is because these two programs are on such equal footing right now. They are middle of the pack SEC teams that, if everything goes right, really can jump up the pecking order. I mean, Vinny Hardy, who we had the other day from Cleveland Wildcats, he talked about how it's like a battle to fight up one spot on the hill and then dig in and try and keep doing that. And that's what I think these two programs kind of view this game as. Like, it's a big opportunity to kind of determine where you're going to finish in the SECs. Mizzou won tonight, and obviously it's great that they got bowl eligible. I mean, I in particular, because I love bowl games so much. I mean, we've always had to stress about Mizzou finding 6 wins on the schedule the last few years, and they got it in October. But I mean, Drinkwitz said it himself in the post-game interview when he was asked about being bowl eligible. He said, "Why stop now?" I mean, that's such a good mentality for this team to have, because I'm not going to say the sky is the limit. I don't see them beating Georgia still. I don't see them going 11-1, 10-2, but 8-4, 9-3, a top 3 finish in the East. I mean, that's very doable. I mean, Florida got absolutely curb stomped by the Kentucky team Mizzou just beat tonight. South Carolina is going nowhere this year. I mean, they're 2-4 and already feel dead in the water. Tennessee feels beatable. I mean, everything is right in front of Mizzou.
Yeah, it's incredibly wide open. I mean, like, I'm just looking at the standings. Like, you have Florida, Mizzou, and Tennessee all at that one conference loss. And, Tennessee still has to go to Alabama, play Kentucky, and play Georgia. Florida, they got a nice win against South Carolina, to their credit, but they still have to play Mizzou. And so that's kind of destiny in your own hands. You just got to win that game. The second place in the SEC in the SEC East is not out of the question by any means for this Missouri team with this win tonight.
I understand, looking at that Georgia game, like, what if Mizzou goes in there and does upset Georgia on the road? It's also just really smart to not look past South Carolina. I know that they're not a better team. I mean, they're not better than they were last year. They're not a really good team this year. Beamer cannot get out of a press conference without blaming someone else for a loss. But you just can't look past it. And I think Mizzou does it well with that. They go into each week. It's a nameless, faceless opponent. And that's a big thing that they always hit on in press conferences. And even though there's a bye after that week, you got to step on their necks. I mean, you have to beat the crap out of South Carolina. You have to play your best football. I know it's homecoming. It's going to be a big deal. It's a big deal for Brady Cook, big deal for everyone on the offense, everyone on that defense, especially everyone that's from the state of Missouri, winning this game at home, especially over South Carolina, who's not been a rival as much as Kentucky, but it's been another team that's been on the same playing level the last 3 years, the last 4 years since Drinkwitz has been there. You just can't look past them. You gotta take a big win into the bye. Then you have 2 weeks to prepare for Georgia. You have everything there. Get healthy, get everyone back to 100%, and that's a perfect time to have the bye.
No,
Dude,
go ahead.
Go ahead. You go.
Okay. I was just going to say, I absolutely agree with that point on South Carolina, not overlooking them because while, yes, you look at their record, they're 2-4 right now. I mean, Shane Beamer just every other week feels like South Carolina fans want to fire somebody. That's still, I mean, we were in the same position last year with the roles reversed. I mean, South Carolina had just gotten ranked. They were coming off an emotional big win that felt like it was going to be a statement over Texas A&M, and it was their homecoming game, and Mizzou was struggling. South Carolina didn't play well, and they fumbled it despite the fact that they were probably the better team. This year, I don't think there's a question. Mizzou is worlds better than South Carolina is, and Mizzou has the capability to beat the crap out of South Carolina and really make a statement going into the bye, but they have to lock it in. And I agree with Kenny. There's no Georgia that you can overlook South Carolina for. It's just the bye week afterwards. So you can have your full attention on South Carolina. And getting that win on homecoming in front of what's going to be likely a sellout crowd, 7-1 into the bye week, that's unbelievable to think about. I mean, 6-2 into the bye is not bad either. You really should get there 7-1 though.
Yeah, I mean, it just creates so much excitement for that next 2 weeks when you don't have a game. The hype can just build and build and build and build before you roll up into Athens, where again, it's 0-0 at the start of the game at that point. But you're right. Like it's a good point. Good humble way to be humble with the roles reverse thing. I didn't even think about that because it was South Carolina's homecoming last year, and it was an embarrassment for them in front of their home fans. And yeah, but with this momentum, it just does not feel like, Mizzou should let that happen. But yeah, it's going to be some atmosphere for sure. And let's not forget, boys, possibly a sellout crowd. Let's not forget the three most important guests that'll be there. The three of us, the Unwritten Rule, will be in attendance for that game. So
Sure
you
will.
can't lose in front of us.
Yeah, and I was kind of almost thinking what if we lose to Kentucky? Then I could see them maybe clinch bowl eligibility. But now it feels honestly even more important because getting to 7-1 going into the bye, I mean, and especially when you look at that LSU game, how winnable it really was. It really, the world is at Mizzou's fingertips right now. And no, I'm still not going to pick them to beat Georgia, win or lose against South Carolina. But the fact that it could be a thought if you handle your business against a team that is having a very disappointing season next week, it at least starts the conversation.
My last thing I want to throw out there is that by the time a lot of our listeners, anyone who comes across us, gets to this video, gets this podcast, they'll know what the AP poll looks like. Do you think Mizzou slips into maybe that 25 or 24 going into this next week?
I was going to ask that.
Absolutely. They're 26 right now. They just beat 24. Beat the crap out of 24, really. Yeah, there's no question they'll be in. And Miami lost.
Yeah, I agree. I think they'll for sure be ranked heading into South Carolina, and yeah, it makes it all the more hype for a celebration for the team that invented the school that invented homecoming. We know the Mizzou Mafia is not afraid to broadcast that fact, and so yeah, I think I just hope this team embraces it and just uses it as a platform to just show why you are among the elite in the SEC, because they are right there. They got a big win on the road today, and they are right there to take that and run with it. And with whatever happens against Georgia in a few weeks, you can finish this season on a very, very happy note and a big improvement in this season for Eli Drinkwitz. What a game, fellas. We had a fake punt, craziness. You have a final thing, Kenny?
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to avoid these dogs barking here late at night. But last year when Mizzou went into Columbia, South Carolina for the homecoming, the Gamecocks were ranked 25th. If the Tigers move in, I don't know if they'll move into 24. If they get,
They'll be higher.
They'll be higher than that, but if they were ranked at 25, it would be kind of fun to see the roles reversed. It is a week earlier than the game was last year. It was on October 29th in 2022. This year will be on October 21st.
There you go. All the rumblings of what feels like a trap game hosting it, but you can't let it happen.
And Spencer Rattler can air it out, man. He really can.
Oh yeah.
And this is a pass defense that's been shaky at times.
Yeah, this is not a Devin Leary quarterback you're welcoming on Saturday. But yeah, I mean, just get to that game and get through that game and see if they can use it as a platform to then go into Georgia. But obviously can't overlook the Gamecocks coming in from South Kakalaka. We'll be there. We'll explain the show schedule, I think, back on Sunday when we record the rest of the show, figure out what we're going to do. But we're excited to go back home and be down for that game. But final from Kroger Field. My goodness, Missouri 38, Kentucky 21. We had a fake punt. It was a beautiful win. Well, ugly win to start and then became beautiful. I don't know. It was just wild. But yeah, that'll do it. If you're listening on Monday, we'll go to quick hits. And for those listening on Sunday and Saturday, when this portion of the show comes out, this has been the Unwritten Rule presented by BetOnline. Everyone go enjoy your NFL Sunday. Go celebrate this win. And we will see you all next time. Adios.